The hydrangeas were collapsing again. Perfect. They always mirrored my mood. I straightened one with a chopstick from last night's takeout, glancing at the row of perfect lawns around me, edges so crisp they could slice through self-esteem. The group chat for our neighborhood, Fairview Bay Ladies, was lighting up my phone. Topic: the company gala. Subtopic: outfits, champagne brands, who's bringing whom. Subtopic: apparently not me. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Andrew had sent his message exactly 6 minutes ago. Short. Clinical. Claire, it might be better if you skip the anniversary event, investor optics and all that. I'll handle things. Rest up. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Rest up, as if I were recovering from a minor surgery, instead of 8 years of running his financials. Optics, I murmured, stabbing the dirt with the chopstick. Sure. Wouldn't want the wife to lower the resolution. A golf cart hummed past. Victoria, his cousin, behind the wheel, diamonds flashing in the sunset. She gave me a neighborly wave that felt like a customer service gesture. I waved back with the same level of enthusiasm reserved for tax reminders. Inside, the house smelled like citrus polish and quiet resentment. Andrew's jackets hung in perfect order, their pocket squares aligned like flag signals from a better world. He'd grown fond of expensive fabrics lately, Italian suits, hand-stitched shoes, a watch so heavy it probably had its own mortgage. 2 years ago, he'd still worn startup hoodies. Now, everything about him came in limited editions. I walked to the kitchen island and opened my laptop. My reflection in the screen looked composed, which was both comforting and slightly dishonest. I typed a note to myself. If you ever wonder when the switch flipped, this text, the one where he called you optics. Then I opened the company dashboard, an old habit. I wasn't supposed to still have access, but Andrew never revoked anything properly. Too much confidence in his own forgetfulness. The numbers loaded. Everything looked fine, until it didn't. Vendor 437 had tripled its monthly invoice. A consultancy retainer, labeled under Elise Hart's department, Andrew's executive assistant. I clicked through. The funds were routed to a shell entity named EHC Advisory. Subtle, except Elise's initials were right there. I checked the sign-off chain, Andrew's digital signature. Twice. I sat back, exhaling through a laugh. Not angry, not yet, just amazed at the sloppiness. 8 years of building that firm together. He'd been the stage voice. I'd been the ledger hands. And this was his new class. Hidden invoices and a part-time finance fairy with access to wire transfers. My phone buzzed again. A message from Victoria. He told me he needed someone more. Polished. Don't take it personally, dear. I typed back. Polished surfaces show fingerprints, then deleted it. No need to feed the family archive of screenshots. Instead, I grabbed my keys and left. The coast was 40 minutes west. A straight shot through scrub pines and billboards for luxury condos that all looked like phone chargers. The air smelled of salt and pavement. I turned off the radio. The silence was better company. Andrew had once called this route our reset drive. We'd come here when the firm was still just spreadsheets and ramen dinners. I'd run forecasts. He'd dream out loud. He used to listen. He used to bring snacks. Now he brought Elise to investor brunches. When the ocean came into view, I parked near our small coastal home, a glass and cedar box he'd bought the same year he started wearing cufflinks. The place was supposed to be a retreat. It had turned into my laboratory for clarity. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and opened the balcony doors. Wind rushed in, lifting the curtains like they were applauding. I set the laptop on the railing and logged in again. I pulled transaction reports, one by one, tracing the pattern. Every transfer under 15,000. Smart. Small enough to avoid automatic flags, large enough to matter over time. Over 3 months, the total hit 6 figures. He thought I wouldn't notice because I'd stopped attending finance calls. He'd asked me to take a break. I had, just not from competence. I poured a glass of soda water and began the quiet math of retribution. First, the bylaws, our firm's rulebook. I'd written most of them. Section 7.2c granted any founding officer authority to pause outgoing payments for 72 hours in case of suspected misuse. I was still listed as a founding officer. Second, share structure. My 10% could be transferred to a new entity, mine, to isolate assets before a vote. He'd never expect paperwork to move faster than his ego. Third, investor notice. I could send a transparency brief citing clause 5.4b. Immediate disclosure of financial irregularities, not accusations, facts, simple numbers. I smiled at the elegance. It wasn't drama, it was arithmetic. The sun slipped lower, turning the ocean into glass shards. My inbox pinged with automated confirmations. I renamed the holding company Blue Marina Holdings, attached my digital signature, and waited for the legal acknowledgement. A notification blinked, registered. I leaned against the railing, the salt air catching my hair. "Congratulations, Claire," I said softly. "You just incorporated your patience." When I got back to Fairview Bay, the streetlights had that suburban glow that makes everyone look freshly moisturized. The HOA wine hour was still going on across the cul-de-sac. I could hear laughter, sharp, brittle, synchronized. Victoria and Megan spotted me as I stepped out of the car. "Claire," Megan's tone was sugared alarm, "we thought you'd be getting ready for the big event." I smiled, changed my plans. Victoria sipped her rosé, examining me like I was an outfit that had missed the memo. "Andrew's under so much pressure tonight," she said. "He's representing the firm at a higher tier now. Those circles can be discerning." "Discerning," I nodded. "Is that what they call it now?" Megan giggled into her glass. "Don't take it wrong. He just wants to project a certain image." "I'm sure he'll project beautifully," I said. "He's had enough practice." They exchanged glances, the kind of quick glance women share when gossip turns into live theatre. Victoria leaned closer. "Between us, he's really grown into the role. Investors love his energy. They think he's, what's the word? Eligible. Eligible. A word that fits better on a dating profile than a balance sheet. I took out my phone and, without a word, showed them a picture someone had sent earlier. Andrew at a conference, ring finger bare, laughing beside Elise. Caption, dynamic duo, and summit. "Oh," Megan said too quickly. Victoria's expression tightened. She adjusted her cardigan. "You shouldn't believe everything online." "Of course," I said, pocketing the phone. "Facts are terribly inconvenient." The moment hung there, perfect and silent, until their wine glasses suddenly became very interesting to them. I walked away, hearing their low whispers restart behind me like a faulty sprinkler. At home, I brewed coffee strong enough to dissolve thought. I opened the firm's admin portal. My access still worked. Of course it did. Andrew never cleaned up after himself digitally. I initiated the fiduciary pause, a standard procedure, perfectly legal, automatically notifying the board and external counsel. It would lock all outgoing transfers until review. Then I attached the ledger screenshots, Elisa's invoices, and a brief note. Subject, emergency pause per sec. 7.2c. Summary, potential unverified consultancy expenses requiring board inspection. See attached transactions. Filed by Claire Donovan, co-founder. I hesitated only once when the confirmation window blinked. A small box asked, "Are you sure you want to proceed?" I laughed under my breath. "Absolutely." Click. The system confirmed, action executed, notification sent. Then I drafted the investor brief. Plain English, bullet points, no adjectives. Facts have sharper edges when left unpolished. By the time I finished, It was nearly 10. The gala would be starting. I imagined the glittering ballroom, the stage lights warming Andrew's confidence, the investors smiling while phones buzzed in their pockets. I didn't need to be there to picture it. Andrew loved theatrics. He'd start his speech with gratitude. We built this together, carefully forgetting the definition of we. Then he'd raise his glass, just as the first notifications arrived. Phones lighting up like holiday ornaments. Investors scrolling, murmurs rippling through the crowd. In my mind's eye, I could see Elise's face across the room. Perfect lipstick, shaky hands. The kind of panic you can't rehearse. I sipped my coffee and waited for the first message. It arrived faster than expected. From Lydia Pierce, investor liaison and longtime friend. Claire, is this real? We need to talk now. Then another, from an unknown number. Accounts frozen. What's going on? Then a dozen more. The bay outside shimmered as the wind picked up. I stepped onto the balcony, phone buzzing non-stop in my hand. Down the street, a neighbor's TV flickered with the local business channel. I could just hear the reporter's voice through the open window. Breaking from the Harbourfront Club, sources say the Donovan Tech accounts are temporarily locked pending review. I smiled. Quietly. Precisely. My phone rang again. Andrew. I let it ring twice before answering. Claire. His voice came low, controlled. What did you do? I followed company policy. You froze my accounts. Our accounts, I corrected. Read the bylaws, section 7.2c. It's your signature on the clause. You're embarrassing me. Not at all. I'm helping you clarify your optics. Silence. Then, we'll talk tomorrow. Privately. Of course, I said. Bring your accountant. And your conscience, if you can find it. I hung up before he could reply. Then I muted the phone, placed it screen down on the table and stared out at the horizon. The tide rolled in with calm authority. I felt the same. By midnight, my inbox looked like a digital fireworks display. Investors thanking me for transparency, others demanding details. Lydia's message stood out. Claire, we suspected something but couldn't act without a formal trigger. You just did the firm a favor. A favor. That word almost made me laugh. I wasn't aiming for favor. I was aiming for truth wrapped in paperwork. I drafted one last reply before shutting the laptop. Appreciate your confidence. Let's meet at 7 a.m., Harbourfront Boardroom. Bring counsel. We'll keep it procedural. Send. I closed the lid, poured another soda water, and sat in the quiet. The night air felt charged, like the seconds before a storm. Not dramatic, just inevitable. I heard tires on gravel. Then a voice. Claire. Tyler Brooks, the partnerships guy. Andrew's second-in-command and professional grin supplier. He stepped out of his sleek coupe, jacket slung over one shoulder. Rough night, he said. I heard. He leaned on the hood, posture casual. You didn't need to do this. We could have worked it out. Define worked out. You know how investors panic. We just needed time to realign the narrative. Meaning cover the transfers? He smiled faintly. Let's not throw around accusations. Fine, let's throw around facts. You co-signed Elise's consultancy account. His jaw tightened. You've been digging. Just gardening, I said. It's amazing what grows when you look. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're making this worse for everyone. I doubt it could get better. For a moment, neither of us moved. The security light clicked on, washing us both in sterile brightness. He blinked, stepped back, muttered something about lawyers, and climbed into the coupe. As he pulled away, the tires hissed on the wet street. I lifted my phone, still recording. Automatic habit. Documentation is my favorite language. Inside, I replayed the audio, just ambient sound, and his flustered voice saying, You didn't need to do this. Not much, but enough to timestamp intent. I archived it, labeled the file, Tuesday conversation. The house felt strangely lighter. Maybe it was the salt air sneaking in. Maybe it was the realization that the worst part wasn't his betrayal. It was how ordinary it had become. Andrew had been fading for months, replacing laughter with schedule invites, replacing affection with performance. Tonight was just the invoice for all of it. At 2 a.m., I opened my notebook, the real one, paper and pen, and made a list. 1. Confirm account freeze via council in the morning. 2. Transfer all voting rights to Blue Marina Holdings. 3. File notice to State Registrar, shareholder change. 4. Draft investor summary. 5. Sleep, optional. I underlined number 5, smiled, and turned off the lamp. Outside, the tide retreated. Inside, I felt a calm I hadn't touched in years, the kind that comes from knowing exactly what to do next. By dawn, the news cycle had caught fire. Tech firm turmoil flashed on every local feed. Reporters camped outside the Harbourfront Club, interviewing guests who had suddenly remembered not to know Andrew. I brewed coffee, showered, and put on a navy blazer, the one he used to call too practical. I liked the way it fit. Efficient. The mirror showed someone I recognized again. Focused, steady, a hint of sarcasm behind the calm. My phone buzzed non-stop, but I ignored it. Let him chase the narrative. I already owned the documentation. When I stepped outside, the neighborhood looked half asleep and half interested. Curtains shifted as I walked to my car. Someone's sprinklers turned on early, misting the driveway like applause. As I backed out, I caught Victoria on her porch, phone to her ear, watching me. I waved. She didn't wave back. On the coastal highway, my phone lit up again, messages piling from unknown numbers, all variations of "we need to talk." Investors, board members, probably Andrew himself under aliases. I ignored them all. Halfway to the Harbourfront district, a final notification appeared. Corporate account, frozen status confirmed. Board review scheduled 7 a.m. I laughed once, short and sharp, the kind of laugh that clears space in the lungs. The ocean shimmered beside the road. The sun was rising, steady, unbothered. I whispered, "Showtime," and pressed the accelerator. The Harbourfront district looked hungover. Seagulls circled above the glass tower, where Andrew's company sign gleamed in corporate optimism. The parking lot smelled of coffee and wet asphalt. Reporters waited by the door, pretending they weren't waiting. I parked 3 blocks away and walked. Easier to blend in when no one's expecting you to show up. Inside the lobby, the receptionist's voice trembled on a phone call. She glanced at me, hesitated, then mouthed, "Thank you," before turning back to her screen. Whatever rumor she'd read about me this morning probably had a hero and a villain. I wasn't sure which one I was supposed to be. The elevator mirrored my face, calm, calculated, slightly amused. I hit the top floor. Time to collect what was left. The boardroom smelled like espresso and unease. Lydia Pierce stood near the window, neat as ever, with a stack of folders under her arm. "You made quite a night of it," she said, handing me one. "Didn't plan to. It just executed itself." Her smile twitched. "Investors are already calling for a vote. Andrew's unreachable. Elise hasn't answered her phone." "She'll surface when her manicure grows out," I said. Lydia handed me the preliminary audit summary. "You were right. The consultancy transfers were unauthorized. He'll have to answer for that." "Not to me," I said. "To the clauses he signed." At the end of the long table sat 3 board members, each with identical stainless travel mugs. Their looks ranged from wary respect to mild panic. One of them, Harris, leaned forward. "Claire, we've reviewed your filing. We need confirmation. Did you intentionally freeze all operating accounts?" "Yes," I said simply, "including discretionary funds." "The pause is compliant with Section 7.2c. Harris nodded slowly. "We've never invoked that clause before." "Then it's about time we used our safety features." The older woman beside him, Madeline, who once described me as too rational for gossip, cleared her throat. Andrew's toast last night was interrupted. I raised a brow. By fax. By a dozen phones buzzing at once, Lydia added. Investors started whispering mid-sentence. Elise walked out. Andrew tried to joke it off, but the DJ stopped playing. It was chaos. I almost felt bad. Almost. My phone kept vibrating through the meeting. Notifications stacked like dominoes. Andrew, call me now. Andrew, you're humiliating us. Tyler, we need to talk, immediately. Unknown. Press request for comment. Confirming account freeze. I silenced the phone and returned to the agenda. So, I said, what's next? Lydia looked up. You're the co-founder. You can request an interim leadership vote if the board deems Andrew compromised. Compromised, I repeated. Such a polite word. Polite keeps lawsuits short, she said. After the meeting adjourned, I walked through the office like a tourist in my own life, desks covered in trendy water bottles and stress balls. The whiteboard still showed quarterly targets I'd helped design months ago. 2 interns stopped talking when they saw me. One whispered, "That's her," like I was a comet that had landed in accounting. I smiled and kept walking. The executive floor doors opened to reveal Andrew's assistant's desk, Elise's kingdom of pastel stationery. Empty. Just a faint scent of perfume and a half-finished latte. On the corner of her desk, a silver-framed photo, Andrew and Elise at a ribbon cutting, both mid-laugh. I turned it face down. The phone buzzed again. Andrew. I answered this time. You have 2 minutes, I said. You blindsided me. Correction, I said. I illuminated you. This could destroy everything we built. You mean everything I built while you were busy selecting cufflinks? He exhaled hard. Claire, I'm trying to handle this. Handle it then. Start by explaining why our assistant owns a consultancy account with 6-figure transfers. It's complicated. It's arithmetic. You're angry. I'm organized. Silence stretched. Then he lowered his voice. You've made enemies, Claire. Investors are calling me non-stop. Maybe they're calling the CEO they can still trust. You're not the CEO. I smiled into the receiver. Yet. Click. I left the building before the gossip could sprout legs. The parking deck air was humid and smelled faintly of ozone. My car waited in the shadows. Tyler stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Always dramatic. Claire, he said, can we talk? I'm on my way out. He followed, keeping pace. You don't understand what you've triggered. Oh, I understand it perfectly. Accountability, consequence, 2 of my favorite topics. He glanced around, lowered his voice. You shouldn't have gone public with the investors. I didn't go public. I went procedural. That's semantics. That's corporate hygiene. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Andrew's falling apart. Elise is gone. Victoria's furious. Then I'm doing something right. He stepped closer, too close. Listen, you can still walk this back. Sign a retraction email. Say it was an internal audit misunderstanding. We'll restore your position quietly. Quietly is your problem, Tyler. Everything you did depended on no one looking. Claire. I lifted my phone, hit record, and held it chest level. Say that again. He froze. What are you doing? Documenting. The motion light overhead flicked on with a loud click. His expression tightened under the harsh glow. You think you're clever, he said finally. You're making enemies you can't handle. Enemies, I said. Such an old-fashioned word. I prefer competitors. He turned, muttering something I didn't catch, and stalked toward his car. The engine roared to life, echoing off the concrete as he sped away. I watched the taillights vanish, then stopped the recording and saved it under deck morning. By noon, my face was on 3 local news feeds. Tech strategist triggers corporate lockdown. My inbox ballooned with media inquiries and "We stand with you" messages from people who'd never stood with anyone before. I ignored them all and drove home. The Fairview Bay neighborhood was buzzing. Literally buzzing, Phone alerts, doorbell notifications, the HOA chat pinging every 5 seconds. Megan had posted a story. When ambition turns toxic, with a blurry shot of the harbourfront sign. Classy. I parked, stepped out and waved at the mailman. He tried not to make eye contact. Even mail had opinions here. Inside, I poured a drink of water and checked my personal account. Nothing extravagant, just balance sheets lined up like soldiers. Order was its own therapy. The doorbell rang. Victoria. Of course. She stood on the porch in designer sunglasses, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. Thought you could use a friendly face, she said, stepping inside without waiting. If you find one, let me know, I said. She set the dish on the counter. You made a mess last night. Cleaning's my specialty. She crossed her arms. Andrew is family. You humiliated him in front of everyone. I didn't humiliate him. I reported anomalies. Do you realize the board could remove both of you? You're playing with fire. Fire's warm, I said. He'll manage. Her lips tightened. People talk, Claire. They say you're vindictive. People also said bottled water was a fad. Victoria sighed dramatically, glanced at my kitchen island like she expected to find moral clarity there. You've always been smart, she said. Don't waste it proving a point. I smiled sweetly. This isn't about a point. It's about the decimal. She blinked, confused. Then she left the casserole and stormed out. It smelled like resentment and cream of mushroom. I spent the afternoon combing through archived board minutes. Elise's name appeared on expense justifications long before her promotion. Tyler had co-signed nearly everyone. No wonder they wanted silence. Each time I found another transfer, I felt less like a scorned wife and more like a detective armed with spreadsheets instead of weapons. Around 5, Lydia called. The board scheduled an emergency session for tomorrow. They'll vote on temporary leadership. Let me guess, I said. Andrew's still unreachable. He's sending messages through Tyler. Then I'll bring the receipts. Evening crept in with the sticky quiet of summer suburbs. Sprinklers ticked in rhythm, and the HOA chat debated the correct height for mailbox flags. Perfect cover for small mischief. Tyler's townhouse sat 2 streets over. I'd noticed his blue coupe parked in the same spot all day. He always bragged about the custom interior, the kind of indulgence that screams untouchable. I opened the HOA maintenance portal and filed a leak complaint for his address. Attached photo, water stain near his garage door, from this morning's rain. The portal assigned me a slot with the association's locksmith, routine access for safety inspections. At dawn, that access would open his garage legally for 10 minutes, plenty of time. I smiled, closed the laptop, and set a reminder. Andrew called again. I almost didn't answer. When I did, his voice was raw. Claire, everything's collapsing. Correction, everything's being accounted for. You've ruined me. No, Andrew, you did that when you thought I'd never notice. He was quiet for a long time, then softly. I made mistakes. Which category? Financial, moral, or aesthetic? Do you even want this marriage anymore? I let out a small laugh. You should have asked that before inviting everyone else into it. He sighed, then shifted tone. I can fix it. Give me 24 hours. You had 8 years. Click. I couldn't sleep. My mind hummed with strategy. Tomorrow meant confrontation. Official, procedural, public. Andrew would try to charm the board. Victoria would try to twist optics. Tyler would try to erase footprints. I'd simply present facts and let gravity do the rest. But first, I had a small side project to finish. Revenge doesn't always need fireworks. Sometimes it just needs glitter. I drove quietly through the neighborhood, a duffel bag in the trunk, dehumidifier, extension cord, and 2 gallons of biodegradable glitter. Nothing illegal, nothing harmful, just memorable. Tyler's townhouse lights were off. Perfect. I unlocked the HOA utility panel, accessed the garage override, and rolled up the door. His prized coupe gleamed under the fluorescence. I set the dehumidifier on the workbench, opened the car door, and carefully poured the glitter into the air vents. A sprinkle into the seat seams for good measure. Then I left a note under the wiper. Please update your vendor W9. Claire door down, lock re-engaged, legal entry, efficient exit. By sunrise, the neighborhood group chat exploded. Photo: Tyler's coupe sneezing glitter through its vents like a disco ball. Caption: When karma sparkles. I added a like, no comment. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Tyler. You think this is funny? He barked. Depends on lighting, I said. Looks better in natural sun. He swore under his breath. You've crossed a line. Which one? The property boundary I legally accessed under HOA Rule 3.2. You're out of control. No, Tyler. For the first time, I'm precisely in control. He hung up. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and watched the neighborhood kids point at his car on their way to school. By 9, I was back at the harborfront building. Reporters hovered outside, but security cleared me through. Lydia waited by the elevator with her folder army. You sure you're ready? She asked. I've been ready since the word optics. Inside the boardroom, tension hummed like an overcharged wire. Andrew sat at the far end, eyes shadowed, suit wrinkled. Tyler, glitter still sparkling in his hairline, looked furious. Victoria occupied the seat nearest the window, polished and smug. Harris opened the meeting. We're here to address recent irregularities. Andrew started talking immediately. This is all a misunderstanding. Internal restructuring caused accounting overlap. Claire overreacted. I leaned forward. Then explain why Tyler's name appears on Elisa's account transfers. Andrew glanced at Tyler. Tyler stared at the table. Lydia slid a printed sheet across. Bank documentation confirms joint authorization. Silence. The kind that tastes like victory. Madeline folded her hands. Given these findings, we propose a temporary shift in leadership until the audit concludes. Andrew started to protest, but Harris raised a hand. Claire, as co-founder, are you willing to assume interim CEO responsibilities? I met Andrew's eyes. He looked stunned, smaller somehow. Yes, I said, I'm willing. The motion passed unanimously. The meeting adjourned with polite chaos, papers shuffling, whispers starting. Andrew avoided my gaze. Victoria stormed out, muttering about betrayal. Tyler slipped away like a man allergic to consequences. Lydia touched my arm. You handled that cleanly. Math usually is, I said. We stepped into the hallway. Reporters swarmed near the lobby. Lydia shielded me as cameras flashed. Any comment? One shouted. Yes, I said, pausing at the door. Integrity audits are healthy. So is sunlight. Then I walked past them, calm, composed, glitter-free. Back home, the sky blushed orange. I stood by the window, watching Victoria's car pull into her driveway with the precision of a general retreating from defeat. The phone buzzed once. Lydia again. Board confirmed your appointment in writing. Your interim CEO effective immediately. I texted back, acknowledged, implementation tomorrow. I closed the blinds, exhaled, and for the first time in months, the house felt like mine again. The coastal wind rattled the windows. My inbox pinged, an unfamiliar address. Subject line, we need to meet. Sender, Elise Hart. Message, I have something you need to see. It's not what you think. I stared at it, heart steady, mind already calculating. Tomorrow just got interesting. By morning, Fairview Bay felt like a beehive someone had tapped with a spoon. Cars rolled slower, past my driveway. Dog walkers pretended not to stare. The HOA chat had evolved into an unofficial newswire, and I'd become its top headline. Local woman freezes husband's tech firm. The comments alternated between admiration and pearl clutching. I made coffee and scrolled through them like morning comics. At 8, Lydia called. Press requests are multiplying, she said without a hello. Good for circulation, I replied. You're trending. Some of the investors want a calm statement, something boring. Boring I can do. Send me the bullet points. She sighed. Also, Elise reached out again. She says she'll only talk in person. I figured she would. Fear looks better over cappuccino. We agreed on noon, downtown cafe, public enough to keep things civil. After hanging up, I stared out the window. Across the street, Victoria was pruning her hedges with surgical precision, pretending not to look over every few seconds. I waved. She didn't. Her clippers paused mid-air. Gossip was her cardio. I showered, dressed in jeans and a white blouse, neutral, unthreatening. The mirror showed a version of me I hadn't seen in years. Steady gaze, faint amusement at the corners. Revenge had side effects no one warned you about. Confidence was one of them. Traffic crawled toward downtown. News radio buzzed about the firm's leadership transition, reporters speculating whether the couple at the center of the storm would reconcile professionally. I turned it off before laughter escaped. Elise was already at the cafe, sunglasses on, stirring her drink as if decoding the universe. She stood when she saw me, managing a polite smile. Claire. Elise, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. You look rested for someone trending on the finance blogs. She glanced around. I didn't know about the transfers. Tyler handled the paperwork. Andrew just approved. Of course he did, I said lightly. Approval is his love language. I thought it was bonuses. She gave a small, nervous laugh, then stopped herself. Look, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I believe you, I said, surprising her. You were trying to help yourself. It's a popular hobby. She pulled a folded document from her purse and slid it over. You need to see this. It's the merger agreement Victoria drafted. Andrew signed a pre-contract. The plan was to announce it at the gala. I unfolded the pages. The language was clear. Post-merger Andrew would retain a ceremonial role. My own shares, already transferred to my holding company, would have been absorbed into a new entity controlled by Victoria's investment group. He hadn't just betrayed me personally. He'd signed away both of us for a seat at a fancier table. Elise leaned forward. I thought it was just business. Then I saw my own name on a separate clause. Termination without compensation. I was decoration, nothing more. That makes two of us, I said. Her eyes shimmered. Not tears, more like realization. Victoria manipulated him. She wanted control of the firm. Tyler helped draft the shell companies. I can prove it. Then you'll testify, I said. To who? To the board. Tonight. She hesitated. Victoria won't forgive me. She doesn't forgive anyone, but she's about to run out of people to manage. When we left, I felt that calm again, the one that settles before a major storm. The puzzle pieces were sliding together with almost insulting neatness. Back at the office, Lydia was waiting with a box of documents. Audit trail, finalized, she said, and our investor friends have approved your interim position unanimously. Efficient, I said. She grinned. You're good for business, Claire. Even chaos needs leadership. As we spoke, my phone vibrated with a new message. Board vote moved up. Tonight, 8 p.m., Harbourfront Boardroom. Victoria's pushing early, Lydia said, reading over my shoulder. Then we'll push back, I said. By mid-afternoon, the office corridors buzzed with whispers. Staff glanced up from screens as I passed. No hostility, just curiosity, the thrill of proximity to scandal. Andrew was nowhere to be seen, but his office door was open, desk cleared. His nameplate still gleamed on the frosted glass like an outdated trophy. I stood there for a moment, remembering the late nights we'd shared in this space. Then I closed the door gently. Some history doesn't deserve a dramatic exit. Outside, clouds gathered over the harbour. I drove toward the marina, needing air before the evening showdown. Boats knocked softly against the docks, the rhythm oddly soothing. Jared Cole, our neighbor and minor investor, spotted me and waved from his yacht slip. "Quite a week, Claire." "You heard?" "Everyone has. Victoria's been making calls, trying to rally sympathy. You might want to know she's meeting someone at 6. Tyler, maybe." I thanked him, keeping my face neutral. Jared was a gossip with selective memory, but he wasn't wrong often. At 6 sharp, I parked near the harborfront restaurant. Through the window, I saw Victoria at a corner table, phone on speaker, Tyler sitting stiffly beside her. She was gesturing sharply, her voice crisp even through glass. The sight was almost comforting. They were predictable. Panic always makes people repeat old patterns. I waited until they left, then entered. The waiter, recognizing me, nodded toward the table. On the seat lay a printed folder, apparently forgotten. I slid it into my bag, left a generous tip, and walked out. Inside the folder, proxy forms, unsigned but pre-filled with investor names Victoria had no authority to represent. She was forging influence one signature at a time. By the time I reached the boardroom, the wind had picked up. Rain tapped against the windows, soft but persistent. Lydia stood at the door with her tablet. "We have the votes counted," she whispered. "If Victoria brings those proxies, it could swing." "She won't have them," I said, holding up the folder. Andrew entered then, late but theatrical, his tie slightly undone, expression carved from regret and charm. "Let's settle this professionally," he said, taking his seat. Tyler followed, eyes shadowed, jacket glittering faintly under the lights. The remnants of his morning humiliation sparkled like punctuation marks. Victoria swept in last, heels clicking like small hammers. "Shall we begin?" she said, voice all poise. Harris, the chair, nodded. "This session concerns leadership continuity and recent financial findings." Victoria leaned forward. "The findings are exaggerated. My cousin simply misplaced oversight." Claire acted impulsively. I opened my folder calmly. "You mean these proxies? Because forging investor signatures looks less like oversight and more like ambition." The room froze. Victoria's eyes flicked to the folder. "That's private property." "It was left in a public space," I said. "Also, your handwriting is remarkably consistent." Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Andrew rubbed his temple, realizing the trap was complete. Harris adjusted his glasses. "We'll verify authenticity, but if this is accurate, it changes everything." Lydia handed out the audit report. Additionally, Ms. Hart has provided corroborating statements regarding the unauthorized transfers and planned merger. Elise stepped forward from the doorway, nervous but steady. "I have copies of emails between Victoria and Tyler outlining the plan. Andrew was told it would increase valuation. He didn't realize he was signing his own exit." Andrew looked at her, then at me. "Claire, I didn't—" I cut him off. "You did. You just didn't read the fine print." The board murmured. Madeline cleared her throat. "Given the evidence, I move that Claire Donovan be confirmed as Chief Executive Officer effective immediately." Harris looked around the table. All in favor. Hands rose, one by one, deliberate, final. Andrew's hand stayed down. Tyler's too. Victoria glared at me, lips pressed into a thin line. "The motion passes," Harris said. "Congratulations, Ms. Donovan." Applause didn't follow. The sound was quieter, shuffling papers, restrained approval, the corporate version of awe. Andrew stood abruptly. "This isn't over," he said. "It's concluded," I corrected. "The numbers confirm it." He hesitated, searching for words that might wound, then settled for silence. Victoria gathered her things with slow precision. "You've made powerful enemies tonight," she said softly. I met her gaze. "At least they're honest ones." She left first, Storm in her wake. Tyler followed, avoiding eye contact. Andrew lingered just long enough to look lost, then walked out. The board members began to disperse. Lydia handed me the official letter confirming my appointment. "Effective immediately," she said. "You handled that with remarkable calm." Calm's cheaper than chaos, I said. When the room emptied, I stayed by the window. The harbour lights shimmered on the wet pavement. My reflection looked almost content. Almost. Outside, reporters were gathering again, umbrellas like mushrooms after rain. I could already imagine the headline, "Wife turns CEO in stunning power shift." Let them write it. The story wasn't finished, but the chapter was mine. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed with a single message. Unknown number again. You may have won tonight, but the game isn't done. I smiled, typed back one word. Watch. Then I walked out of the boardroom, heels steady against the marble, the sound echoing through the corridor, like punctuation at the end of a sentence that finally made sense. The morning after the board vote, Fairview Bay felt quieter, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes when everyone's waiting for the next headline. The neighborhood chat was full of coded sympathy, people posting inspirational quotes about resilience and taking control. None of them mentioned names, but they didn't have to. I was the quote now. I woke early, made coffee, and opened the curtains. Across the street, Victoria's driveway was empty. Her silver sedan was gone before sunrise, probably on a mission to reclaim control of a situation she didn't own anymore. I almost admired her persistence. She treated power like oxygen. My inbox was an avalanche. News outlets requesting statements. Investors congratulating me with the cautious tone of people still adjusting to the new order. Lydia had already scheduled interviews and blocked off most of the week for press calls. I replied to her message with 2 words, no comment. By 8, I was driving to the office. Rain lingered on the streets, giving everything a reflective shimmer. When I pulled into the lot, the security guard saluted awkwardly, as if unsure whether to bow or smile. Power makes people polite in strange ways. Inside, the energy had changed. Employees looked up when I entered, conversation softening mid-sentence. Someone clapped once, then stopped. I gave a small nod and walked straight to my new office, Andrew's old one. His nameplate had already been removed. The desk was empty, except for a glass paperweight shaped like a globe. I turned it slowly in my hand, watching the light bounce off continents. He'd always liked symbols. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began reviewing the overnight reports. Lydia appeared at the doorway, her tone brisk. Victoria's been calling investors since dawn. She's trying to convince them the vote was illegal. Was it? I asked. Not remotely. Then let her make noise. It'll keep her busy while we build something that actually works. Lydia smiled faintly. Elise is downstairs. She brought copies of the emails from the merger plan. Good, I said. We'll need them. By mid-morning, I'd reviewed Elise's documents, correspondence between Victoria and a corporate law firm, discussing a silent takeover, complete with pre-filled press releases and projected valuation charts. Every line of it was both predictable and useful. I scanned, archived, and sent a copy to corporate counsel. Around 11, my phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. I answered, expecting another reporter. Instead, Andrew's voice came through, calm but strained. Can we talk? About what? You won. Isn't that enough? It wasn't about winning, I said. It was about accuracy. He exhaled audibly. Victoria's furious. She says you stole her proxy files. I collected misplaced property. She's not going to stop. I didn't expect her to. He hesitated. We should meet. There are things you don't understand. I understand more than you think, I said, and hung up before he could respond. At noon, Lydia and I headed to the conference level for a compliance review. Halfway down the hall, the elevator doors opened, and there he was, Andrew, looking less like the man who'd once run this place, and more like someone trying to remember how. His suit was pressed, but his eyes were tired. Claire, he said, stepping forward, please. Not the hallway, Andrew. Optics, remember? He flinched at his own word. You've made your point. I'm just getting started. He looked like he wanted to argue, then thought better of it. Fine, we'll talk later. Unlikely, I said, and walked on. The compliance meeting ran long, filled with procedural terms and polite tension. Every time someone said Miss Donovan, I felt the room recalibrate. Power has weight, and it was settling on me like a tailored coat. When we finished, Lydia handed me a sealed envelope. Courier from legal. Says it's urgent. I opened it. Inside was a single-page notice. Emergency vote rescheduled for tonight. Motion to reconsider leadership decision. Signed by Victoria and 3 minor investors she'd managed to convince. Lydia frowned. They're moving fast. So are we, I said. Call Elise, tell her to bring the physical proof, and have Jared meet me at the marina. The marina. I need to pick up something he's been keeping for me. By late afternoon, the clouds had thickened. I drove to the harbour, wind whipping at the car as the first drops began to fall. The air smelled of salt and static. Jared was waiting by his boat, holding a small lockbox. Everything you asked for, he said. I opened it. Inside were investor binders, original contracts, board meeting notes, and email printouts showing Victoria's early attempts to manipulate voting shares. Jared shifted awkwardly. She tried to bribe me to keep quiet. I figured you'd make better use of this. You figured right. He grinned nervously. You know, Claire, this whole thing's going to be a miniseries someday. I hope they cast someone tall, I said, taking the box. As I turned to leave, headlights flared across the dock. Tyler's coupe, glitter still clinging to the dashboard vents, rolled to a stop. He stepped out, looking agitated. You shouldn't be here, he said. Public marina, I replied. I have as much right as anyone. He moved closer. Victoria's calling an emergency vote tonight. She wants you out before the press cycle closes. I'm aware. She's not bluffing. She has dirt on Andrew, maybe on you. I tilted my head. On me? That would require creativity. Don't underestimate her, he said, voice lowering. She doesn't lose gracefully. Neither do I. Rain began to pour harder, drumming against the dock. Tyler looked over my shoulder at the box in my hands. What's that? Evidence, I said, of a better story. He laughed bitterly. You really think you're the hero here? I stopped believing in heroes when I married one. For a second, something human flickered across his face. Regret, maybe. Then he turned and walked away, coat-soaked, glitter running down his collar like irony made visible. Back in the car, I placed the lockbox on the passenger seat. My phone buzzed with another message from Lydia. Vote confirmed for 8 p.m. Bring everything. I arrived at the harbourfront building just as the sky went navy. The lobby was nearly empty, except for security guards and a few anxious assistants. The elevator ride felt endless, the kind of stillness that tests conviction. The boardroom lights were bright, reflecting off the glass walls like a stage. Victoria was already there, flanked by 2 of her investor allies. Andrew sat opposite her, expression unreadable. Tyler stood near the back, arms crossed. Harris entered last, looking exhausted. Let's begin, he said. Victoria launched in immediately. The prior vote was conducted under misinformation. I have reason to believe Claire obtained sensitive documents illegally. I set the lockbox on the table and opened it with deliberate calm. You mean these? Meeting minutes, investor emails, your own correspondence? She stiffened. That's private. It's also signed, I said, sliding a page forward. Right here, your initials. Discussing a plan to dilute both Andrew's and my shares. That's the definition of bad faith. The room buzzed. Harris leaned in. Is this verified? Lydia nodded. Our legal team cross-checked the headers. Authentic. Victoria tried to recover. Those were preliminary ideas. Nothing executed. Intent matters, I said, especially when written in ink. Andrew spoke up quietly. She's right. Victoria pushed the merger. I signed because I thought it would elevate us. I didn't realize she'd erase us both. Victoria turned on him. You spineless fool. Enough, Harris interrupted. This meeting will remain civil. Lydia handed out a new motion form. Given this evidence, the reconsideration request is void. The prior vote stands. Victoria's jaw tightened. You think this is over? The investors won't trust her after this circus. They already do, I said, because I don't need to hide my math. The rain beat harder against the windows. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Harris cleared his throat. Meeting adjourned. Ms. Donovan remained CEO. Victoria gathered her papers with sharp movements, muttering into her phone as she left. Tyler followed silently, eyes fixed on the floor. Andrew stayed behind. When the door closed, he looked at me across the table. You've got everything now, he said softly. Not quite. I still need to clean the house. He gave a humorless laugh. You really can't stop, can you? Not until it's organized. He stood, adjusting his tie. You won, Claire. Enjoy it. I will, I said, though I wasn't sure if that was true. When he left, I exhaled slowly. The tension drained in measured increments, replaced by focus. Lydia lingered by the door. You handled that beautifully, she said. I handled it logically, I replied. Beauty had nothing to do with it. She smiled. Still, it was satisfying. Outside, the storm was subsiding. The city lights reflected off wet streets like fragments of glass. I walked to the parking deck, the sound of my footsteps steady, deliberate. Halfway to my car, movement caught my eye. Tyler, leaning against a pillar. You really humiliated her, he said. She did that herself. He stepped forward, hands raised. I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to warn you. Victoria's regrouping. She'll come after the company, not just you. I'll be ready. He looked at me for a long time, then shook his head. You're colder than she is. Colder, I said, unlocking my car, is just another word for prepared. He turned and walked toward the stairwell, shoes echoing on the concrete. I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. The wipers cleared the windshield, revealing the empty street beyond. As I drove home, the storm clouds broke, revealing a thin stripe of silver sky. Fairview Bay glimmered in the distance, lawns damp and spotless, secrets temporarily washed clean. For now. At a red light, I checked my phone. One new message from an unknown number. Enjoy the view while you can. I deleted it without replying. The game was still moving, but so was I. When I pulled into the driveway, the hydrangeas were upright again, drops clinging to their petals like sequins. I smiled at their persistence. Inside, the house felt still. I poured water, stood by the window, and looked out over the quiet street. Somewhere, Victoria was plotting, Andrew was sulking, and Tyler was trying to decide which side of the fence would keep him dry. I had no illusions this was over, but for the first time, the pieces were exactly where I wanted them, and I planned to keep them that way. Rain fell in long silver threads, the kind that blurred the edges of everything and made even Fairview Bay look cinematic. I parked a few houses down from Victoria's place, watching her windows glow in warm yellow squares. Music drifted faintly through the cracked car window. Piano, deliberate, expensive. The kind of sound meant to suggest sophistication while masking panic. Her house looked like a showroom, every window perfectly lit, every curtain in precise symmetry. I could almost hear her rehearsing in front of a mirror, trying to make her smile convincing again. Tonight wasn't just about social performance. It was a last stand in pearls and catered hors d'oeuvres. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. No armor tonight, just a sleek black dress, hair tied low, quiet makeup. I looked like someone who didn't need permission anymore. That was the point. When I walked up the path, a valet rushed forward, assuming I was invited. I handed him my keys, smiled politely, and stepped inside. The air smelled like gardenia and tension. Conversations paused just long enough for everyone to realize who had arrived. Victoria stood near the fireplace, mid-sentence, holding a champagne flute. Her pause was microscopic but noticeable, like a skipped note in a song. "Claire," she said finally, voice bright as glass. "How lovely that you could make it." "I wouldn't miss it," I said. A few heads turned, pretending not to eavesdrop. Andrew was across the room, talking to Tyler and a pair of investors who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. His eyes found mine briefly, then looked away. That was fine. I wasn't here for him. Victoria gestured to the bar. "Champagne?" "Still water," I said. "I like to remember things clearly." Her smile faltered for half a breath. Then she waved over a server. "Of course." The crowd resumed its low chatter. Laughter bubbled artificially around the room. These were people who measured friendship by profit margins and gossip by yield. The music changed, something slow and almost sentimental. Victoria drifted closer, voice low. "You made quite an impression at the board. Congratulations." "I didn't make it," I said. "I earned it." Her lips curved. "Don't confuse a temporary vote with permanence. Influence fades fast." "So does credibility," I said, "especially when it's printed on falsified proxies." Her eyes narrowed, the expression smoothed away almost instantly. "You always had a sharp tongue. I suppose it helps now that you have an audience." "I'm not performing," I said. "You are, but your scene's almost over." Before she could reply, Tyler approached, holding 2 glasses. He looked uneasy, his earlier arrogance stripped away. "Ladies," he said, "truce tonight." I met his gaze. "That depends which side you're on this hour." He hesitated. "Victoria, maybe you should let this go. The firm's not worth a war." She turned to him slowly. "A man advising surrender. How novel." "Careful," he said quietly. "You're losing more than investors." Her smile sharpened. "You mean you?" He didn't answer, just set his glass down and walked away. The silence that followed was short but sharp. People sensed something worth watching and turned their attention subtly in our direction. Victoria leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You think you've cornered me. You haven't. I know things, Claire, about Andrew, about you." "Then use them," I said evenly, "but make sure they're real this time." She blinked, surprised I didn't flinch. The truth was simple. There wasn't anything left she could twist. My mistakes were already visible and I'd survived them. That was my advantage. A waiter passed with a tray of canapes. I took one, mostly to break eye contact, then turned toward the crowd. "Nice party," I said, almost nostalgic. Her voice followed me. "This isn't over." "Of course it isn't," I said without turning back. "You're not creative enough to end it well." The music swelled behind me as I walked away. Elise appeared near the hallway, phone in hand. "She's unraveling," she whispered. "I've been recording." I raised an eyebrow. "How much?" "Enough." We stepped onto the patio, rain misting through the air. Elise handed me her phone. On screen, the audio file scrolled, a recording of Victoria earlier in the evening, bragging to a small cluster of investors that she still had access to private documents and ways to control outcomes. "Perfect," I said. "Send it to Lydia. Secure line." Elise nodded. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "she learns what it feels like when optics turn." We re-entered the house just as a thunderclap rolled over the bay, shaking the windows slightly. Guests murmured, startled, laughing it off. I glanced toward the grand piano where Victoria had taken position again, raising her glass for attention. "Friends," she began, voice too bright, "thank you for standing with me through this challenging transition." The crowd clapped politely. I could almost taste the falseness in the air. She continued, "There are narratives in the media that distort the truth. I assure you, integrity still matters here at Donovan Tech." That was my cue. I stepped forward. I agree, I said loudly. Integrity matters most when no one's watching. Heads turned again. The room went still except for the soft hum of rain outside. Victoria's eyes flickered, but she forced a smile. Always one for drama, Claire. Just conversation, I said. Maybe even clarity. Would you like to tell your guests how those proxy votes were prepared? Or should I? A murmur rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Proxy votes." Another phone camera tilted discreetly upward. Victoria's tone hardened. "You're trespassing in more ways than one." "I was invited by your publicist," I said smoothly. "Besides, I work better with witnesses." She set her glass down. "You're making a spectacle." "I prefer a demonstration," I said, taking Elise's phone and connecting it to the house speaker via Bluetooth. Simple, efficient. The audio began playing before she could stop me. Her own voice filled the room. "I still have access to the files. If she thinks she's secure, she's naive. They'll turn on her soon enough." Gasps, phones recording, investors exchanging looks. Victoria froze, then lunged for the phone. I stepped aside, letting her grasp at air. "Enough," she snapped, voice cracking. "Not quite," I said. "The board will have copies by morning." She looked around, realizing the audience she'd cultivated was now an audience for her collapse. Andrew stepped forward, expression conflicted. "Victoria, stop." "Don't you dare lecture me," she hissed. I turned to the guests. "You'll all receive official clarification tomorrow. For now, enjoy the party. It's probably the last one hosted here." And with that, I walked out into the rain. Outside, the air felt sharp, honest. Elise followed, breathless, half laughing. "That was unreal." "Real enough," I said. "She'll spend the night spinning statements. By sunrise, her investors will be gone." We reached my car. She hesitated. "You think Andrew will ever admit what he did?" "He already did," I said. "Just not in words." She nodded, looking relieved and tired. "You're not afraid she'll retaliate?" "She will," I said, starting the engine. "But she'll do it in daylight, and I work better there." I dropped her off near her apartment, then drove along the coastal road. The storm had softened to drizzle, the ocean reflecting the faint glow of streetlights. For the first time in weeks, I allowed silence. Not the kind filled with tension, but the calm after a storm's logic has played out. When I got home, the neighborhood was dark except for porch lamps. The hydrangeas leaned heavy with rain, still standing. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. I hung up my coat, slipped off my heels, and walked through the living room where Andrew's last family portrait still hung. I stopped, studied it for a moment, then turned the frame around. My phone buzzed, a message from Lydia. "Audio verified. Press coverage already turning in your favor. Investors pulling from Victoria's firm. Well done." Another message followed seconds later from an unknown number. "You should be careful where you walk, Claire. Not everyone forgives." I stared at it, then typed a single response. "I don't need forgiveness." I switched off the lights and went upstairs, the soft sound of rain still tapping against the windows. In the mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself, tired but steady, edges sharper, eyes clearer. Revenge had a way of refining people. Lying in bed, I thought about what came next. The firm was mine now, truly. Victoria's influence was fading fast. Tyler would crawl back, probably offering cooperation. Andrew would either vanish or try to rewrite the story, but neither mattered. What mattered was the structure I'd built, the one they all underestimated. I'd learned early in finance that chaos is only temporary. Numbers always find balance. Tonight proved the same rule applies to people. Outside, thunder rolled one last time over the coast. I smiled into the dark, the kind of smile that comes not from victory, but from the quiet certainty of control reclaimed. Tomorrow, there would be more calls, more interviews, more careful statements. But tonight, Fairview Bay slept under its perfect lawns and glowing porch lights. unaware that its queen of gossip had fallen, and the woman she mocked had rewritten the entire script. I closed my eyes and let the quiet stretch long enough to feel almost peaceful. The war was nearly over, but I wasn't done yet. Not until every trace of arrogance that once dismissed me as unpolished was scrubbed clean from this town's memory. And if I had to stay sharp, calculating, and a little ruthless to do it, so be it. Some gardens bloom best after a storm. Morning sunlight spilled across the marble kitchen counter, catching the edge of my coffee mug and the faint shimmer of salt still left from the storm. The sky looked scrubbed clean. Fairview Bay had a short memory. It always did. Last night's scandal was today's gossip, and by next week, it would be someone else's turn under the microscope. That was the rhythm here. Scandal, denial, repeat. I had simply learned to stay 2 beats ahead. Lydia's text arrived before I finished my first sip. Press wants a live interview. Studio downtown at 11. Investors are watching. You'll look composed, authoritative, maybe even forgiving, if that's possible. I smirked. Forgiving is off the menu, I typed back. Composed, absolutely. I dressed in charcoal grey, the kind of colour that projected competence without invitation. Outside, the air smelled like rain and clean pavement. A few neighbours pretended not to see me when I drove past their trimmed hedges. Fairview Bay had mastered the art of pretending neutrality while storing every rumour like fine china. Traffic was light. At stoplights, I could see notifications lighting up my phone screen. Articles, mentions, a few congratulatory messages from people who'd ignored me for months. Success always widened circles. When I reached the studio, Lydia was already there, headset around her neck, eyes bright with strategy. "They'll ask about Victoria," she said without preamble. "You'll stay calm. No mockery, no sarcasm, just poise. Let her look erratic by comparison." "That shouldn't be hard," I said. She handed me a paper. "These are the talking points: stability, transparency, collaboration." I scanned them, then handed it back. "I'll improvise." The studio lights were harsher than expected, white, clean, unforgiving. The host smiled with that perfect mix of curiosity and control. "Claire Donovan, newly appointed CEO of Donovan Tech, joins us this morning. Claire, what's next for the company?" I smiled slightly. "Progress with accountability. We're focusing on rebuilding trust with our partners and keeping our operations transparent. And the rumors about a leadership dispute. Disputes happen when people forget what they're building," I said evenly. "We're past that now. Your predecessor, your husband, hasn't made a statement. Do you expect him back in the company?" "He has the right to rebuild his career," I said. "Just not here." The host blinked, surprised at my frankness, but smiled again. "Direct. I think people will appreciate that." After the interview, Lydia exhaled loudly. "That was perfect. Calm but sharp. Investors will love it." "Let them," I said. "They've earned a show." Back at the office, my assistant handed me a note. "Victoria requesting meeting. Private, noon." I looked at the clock. "She's quick." "She said it's important," the assistant added, cautious. "Everything is important to Victoria," I said. "Tell her I'll see her in the boardroom." At 12 sharp, she arrived. Designer coat, sunglasses, expression composed but stretched thin. Her perfume entered the room before she did. "Claire," she said, "I assume this is neutral ground." "As neutral as you'll find," I replied. "Have a seat." She didn't. She stayed standing, clutching her bag like it contained her dignity. "You've made your point. Public humiliation, corporate takeover. Well done. But I came to propose a truce." "That's generous," I said. "I didn't know you believed in peace." Her lips twitched. "You can gloat, or you can listen. The firm needs stability. Investors don't care about drama. They care about returns. If you keep this war going, everyone loses. I'm offering to sell my remaining shares and walk away quietly. In exchange, you remove my name from all legal filings. I studied her. You want me to clean your record? I want to move on, she said. You've won. Take it. Her tone was rehearsed, her calm a costume. I could see the calculation behind it, the hope that I'd accept, that she could disappear with reputation intact. You'll sell your shares at market rate, I said. No special arrangements, no gag clauses, and you'll send a written acknowledgement that the documents you forged were yours alone. Her eyes flickered. You know I can't sign that. Then you can't sell, I said, standing. You don't get to choose the terms anymore. Her composure cracked, just for a second. You'll regret this, she whispered. I doubt it, I said. You've mistaken self-respect for regret. She turned sharply, heels clicking against the floor, and left without another word. Lydia entered moments later, raising an eyebrow. How bad was it? She offered peace, I said. I offered honesty. We disagreed on the price. Lydia smiled faintly. I'll draft the market sale notice. By afternoon, the building was humming again, energized by gossip disguised as productivity. Andrew had been spotted at a nearby hotel, giving interviews of his own. His statements were cautious, flattering to me in a way that read like damage control. I let him talk. He was free publicity now. Around 3, Elise came to my office holding a small flash drive. I found something you should see, she said, from the old server. She plugged it in and pulled up a series of video files, security footage from the previous month's gala. One clip showed Andrew and Victoria in the corner of the ballroom, mid-conversation. He looked frustrated, she looked triumphant. There was no sound, but their gestures said enough, her leaning in, whispering, him nodding reluctantly. Elise pointed at the timestamp. This was right before your invitation got revoked. I stared at the screen, watching his face. Not guilt, something worse. Indifference. It confirmed what I already knew. Betrayal had been casual for him. Convenient. Keep a copy, I said. The rest gets archived. When Elise left, I shut the monitor off. The room felt still, the kind of stillness that isn't quiet but concentrated. The kind before motion. At 5, my phone buzzed again. Lydia. The transfer went through. Victoria sold her shares. She's out completely. Perfect, I said. Also, Lydia added, the press just broke another story. Andrew's investors are suing him personally for breach of trust. Seems your transparency emails had more reach than expected. That's their problem, I said. But keep an eye on it. Evening crept in soft and grey. I stayed late, finishing reports, reviewing contracts, watching the city lights reflect off the conference room glass. For the first time, the building felt like mine. Steady, focused, alive. When I finally left, Fairview Bay was quiet again. The air smelled faintly of seaweed and asphalt. The houses along the drive home glowed with domestic comfort. Soft lights, perfect curtains, nothing out of place. A performance, but a convincing one. At home, I poured water into a glass and sat by the window. The ocean beyond shimmered in the moonlight, calm and endless. My reflection in the glass looked different now. Less the strategist, more the survivor of her own plan. The victory felt clean but not simple. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from Andrew. We should talk, I can explain. I typed back, you already did. Another message came almost immediately. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I set the phone down without replying. Enjoyment wasn't the right word, clarity was, and I had that in abundance now. Outside, a car engine passed slowly, headlights sweeping across the front lawn. I recognized the silhouette, Tyler's coupe. He parked a few houses down and sat there for a minute before driving off again, probably debating whether to ask for forgiveness or protection. Either way, he wasn't ready. I turned off the living room lights and walked upstairs. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the ocean wind. I paused at the doorway of the office, Andrew's old study. His framed certificates still hung neatly on the wall. I took them down one by one, stacking them against the desk. They made a small, satisfying sound when they touched. In their place, I hung a single-frame document, the official letter naming me Chief Executive Officer of Donovan Tech. Clean font, crisp paper, no embellishment. It looked right there, like it belonged. As I stepped back to admire it, my phone vibrated again. Lydia, one more update before bed. Victoria's PR firm just dissolved their contract with her. Investors want to meet with you next week. They're calling it the Donovan turnaround. I typed, schedule it, and send flowers to the PR firm. White lilies, neutral, professional, mildly ironic. Her reply came with a laughing emoji. You're terrifying in the best way. I smiled. Efficient, I corrected out loud. Later, lying in bed, I listened to the faint crash of waves outside. My thoughts drifted not to the company, but to the moment Andrew told me I didn't fit his new class. The phrase used to sting. Now it sounded absurd. I had built the class he wanted to enter. He just didn't know it. Fairview Bay would talk, of course. They'd say I'd gone too far, that I'd been ruthless. They'd debate whether I'd planned it all along or simply reacted well to betrayal. Let them speculate. Their chatter was proof that I mattered again, maybe for the first time on my own terms. Before sleep took me, I thought of the firm, my firm now, standing tall under the same name that once excluded me. Donovan Tech. It almost felt poetic. The name he tried to make his own now carried my voice. I closed my eyes and smiled. Revenge wasn't the right word either. This was reclamation, pure and steady, and I intended to keep every inch of it. When morning came again, I'd be ready to build something lasting. But tonight, I allowed myself a rare thing: stillness, satisfaction, and the quiet rhythm of knowing everything was exactly where it should be.